In the quiet countryside of Tennessee, a teenage girl named Cairo lives in an isolated mansion which is the property of her wealthy parents. But with both parents being high-profile lawyers and constantly away for work, Cairo has grown used to the loneliness around her. Each day, she dresses in her signature boots and short skirt, walking confidently through the woods to reach school. At the school, we are introduced to her literature teacher, Jonathan Miller, who leads a modest life. He was once an aspiring novelist, but Miller now teaches high school literature, having long abandoned his dreams of success writing. On Cairo's first day in his class, she had immediately captured his attention, not just with her punctual arrival, but with her intellect. She casually tells him that she's already completed the semester's entire reading list, a feat that leaves him astonished. Eventually, their mutual appreciation for literature sparks a meaningful conversation, and momentarily bridging the gap between student and teacher. However, their interaction is disrupted when Cairo's classmate Winnie arrives, who is a repeat student known for her unruly behavior. She quickly whisks Cairo away to the cafeteria, leaving Miller behind to browse through the novels on her desk. As he sifts through them, his colleague Boris walks in and teasingly reads aloud from one of the more provocative titles. But amid the collection, Boris discovers something surprising. It was a copy of Miller's long-forgotten novel. The sight shocks them both, and although the novel never gained popularity, Cairo's choice to read it revives a sense of validation in Miller, giving him a fleeting moment of recognition he hadn't felt in years. Later that evening, Miller returns home to his wife, Beatrice, who is immersed in her computer work, and she pays little attention to his attempts at conversation. As he tries to share the uplifting moment from his day, Beatrice is interrupted by a call from her co-worker, Amy. The call drags on, and Miller's excitement begins to fade. When he tries again later to connect with her, Amy calls once more, and this finally extinguishes any hope for them to be together that evening. The next morning, he vents his frustrations to Boris, as he laments how his weekend was derailed by Amy's constant interruptions. Boris, however, tries to lighten his mood as they talk. Soon, they watch Cairo emerge from the woods in her usual style and walk directly to greet Miller and Boris. In a bid to draw himself back to reality, Miller initiates a casual chat with her as Boris steps away. Later that morning, in the hallway, Winnie dramatically drops her books on the floor as Boris walks by, just to catch his attention. But he sees through her antics, and before anything could transpire, Cairo approaches her friend and warns her about her daring approach. That evening, Cairo visits her friend and Winnie offers her an unoriginal essay topic for her assignment. Although Cairo is not impressed by her suggestion, she listens as Winnie starts to propose an idea, one that seems to shift the tone of the conversation entirely. Winnie suggests that Cairo could flirt with Miller in order to spark inspiration for her writing. This totally catches Cairo off guard as she reminds her friend about the age difference, but Winnie remains unfazed, as she assures her that maturity can offer a different kind of connection, one that is grounded in understanding and emotional depth. Though Cairo remains uncertain about this, she starts to get curious about how this could play out. Over the following days, Cairo starts paying more attention to Miller, and in class, her thoughts start to drift as she finds herself watching him more often. After class one day, Miller asks her to see him after school. That afternoon, Miller and Boris had a chat in his class, and Miller ended up inviting him over for dinner with his wife that evening. As Boris leaves, Miller is alone, and as he starts dancing to a tune from the radio, Cairo walks in. Embarrassed at being caught, he quickly brushes it off with humor, and the two share a brief, light-hearted moment. Their conversation runs through Cairo's friendship with Winnie and her life at home. Miller then praises her writing, as he is impressed by her precision and insight. He also becomes attracted to her talent, and he challenges her to write a short story in the style of her favorite author. If she succeeds, he promises that she'll ace the semester. Cairo accepts eagerly and surprises him by quoting a line from one of his own published works. Miller is impressed by this as he reveals that that was his first published book, something he holds close to his heart. Very impressed by her passion, he invites her to join him for a weekend event to discuss her story further. On the day of the event, Cairo arrives at the venue alone, and moments later, Miller playfully sneaks up behind her. They eventually sit together as a poet named Elliot performs. While Miller listens, Cairo occasionally glances at him, with her feelings growing more complex. Afterward, the two critique the performance, as they share thoughts and ideas about the event. Cairo then offers him a cigarette, which he accepts as they continue their little chat and grow more comfortable together. The next school day, Cairo appears transformed and more confident. She brings coffee for Miller and Boris, and once again shares a cigarette with Miller as the two joke when Boris leaves. Later, she confides in Winnie that Miller didn't say anything about her new look, but she could sense that he noticed. Towards the end of school that day, Miller receives a text from his wife informing him that she had planned for a surprise weekend trip for them, and that totally gets him excited. But as he starts getting ready to leave, Cairo approaches to inform him that she has decided to write her story in the style of Henry Miller, a writer known for exploring intimacy and emotional complexity. He is taken aback by her words, as he is fully aware of the risks such a topic might pose in a school setting, and he initially expresses concern. But Cairo assures him it's the right approach, and he reluctantly agrees. Still very much caught between his emotions and his obligations, he quickly approves Cairo's story concept, barely considering the implications as he hurried away to meet his wife. Soon, Winnie joins Cairo in class, and as they talk, she teases her friend about how she's trying to seduce their teacher. But Cairo quietly brushes it off and tells Winnie that she just wants to get her work done. Moments later, Cairo notices that her phone is missing and she frantically searches for it inside her bag. At the same time, Miller is already at home, and he is once again faced with his wife dealing with repeated calls from Amy, which is delaying the weekend getaway plan for the two. Moments later, Miller hears a phone ringing in his bag. It was Cairo's phone, which she had mistakenly left in his bag. Since his wife was not ready yet, and in order to smoothen things over, Miller offers to return the phone to Cairo's house himself, despite the bad weather conditions outside. So, he drives to Cairo's house where he finds her stepping out of the building wearing a strikingly revealing dress. When their eyes meet in the downpour, the moment builds with intensity as they get close and share a passionate kiss that shifts everything between them. The next day, Miller eventually receives Cairo's story, and as he reads it at home, he becomes deeply absorbed in its intimate nature and content. The narrative explores themes of intimacy and power, and his mind starts visualizing Cairo within the story's scenes. Troubled yet fascinated by the details of the story, he is forced to please himself as he finishes reading the story. The next day, Cairo arrives in class wearing a more provocative outfit, but she soon senses a cold shift in Miller's demeanor when he walks into the classroom. The warmth and attention he once showed her are gone. Disturbed by his change in attitude, she asks what was wrong, and Miller admits that her story, although it is well written, crosses boundaries inappropriate for a school setting. And though he recognizes her talent, he expresses concern over the message it might send to others, so he'll be rejecting the story for academic evaluation. Cairo is in total disbelief as she tries to defend her work, insisting it isn't as personal as he believes. But Miller refuses to listen as he dismisses the story entirely and tells her he regrets trusting her. Wounded and angry by his sudden change of attitude, Cairo lashes out, criticizing his own writing as mediocre and uninspired. She accuses him of being jealous of her talent. And as the confrontation starts to escalate, Miller emphasizes the need to reestablish boundaries between them. Totally hurt by this, Cairo storms out and drops her story off in the administrative mailbox. That night, Miller confides in his wife about Cairo's story as he explains that the narrative, which is centered on a student-teacher relationship, mirrors their own situation too closely to ignore. Meanwhile, Cairo goes into reckless drinking with Winnie, and when they become intoxicated, the girls take provocative photos, and Cairo convinces Winnie to send them to Boris in an attempt to seduce him. Boris receives the explicit message while visiting Miller's home, and he abruptly gives an excuse and leaves. Soon after, Miller gets a call from the school principal, summoning him for a meeting the next morning. When he gets to the principal's office, he is accused of having an inappropriate relationship with a student. And despite denying the allegations, the evidence and recent interactions between him and Cairo cast heavy suspicion. Back home that evening, Miller attempts to reassure Beatrice, but she expresses serious concern that the scandal could end his career and damage their marriage beyond repair. The next day, Cairo skips class to attend a private meeting with the principal, while Miller remains in the classroom, consumed by uncertainty. As the school day progresses, Winnie notices Cairo's absence and questions Miller about her whereabouts. But emotionally drained and unsure of anything himself, Miller offers her no answers. Eventually, the meeting between Cairo and the principal ends with the administration convinced that Cairo and Miller were involved. In the end, the school decides to suspend Miller pending further investigation. When he gets outside, Boris confronts him as he starts to admonish him for failing to maintain professional boundaries between him and his students. But the warning comes too late, and with his reputation in question and his future uncertain, Miller is left isolated, caught in the unraveling of a situation that has gone out of his control. Back home, Miller informs Beatrice of his suspension, and when she presses for the full truth, he reluctantly admits to having developed feelings for Cairo. The confession triggers a fierce argument as she insists that she believes that he must have had an affair with the girl. Although Miller tries to convince her otherwise, and also stresses the point that Beatrice's busy schedule has not really allowed for them to be close, he pleas fall on deaf ears. And in the end, Beatrice announces her intention to file for divorce and storms out of the room. Meanwhile, Winnie confronts Cairo and pleads with her to consider the damage she's causing. But Cairo, who looks very nonchalant about the situation, informs her that she views the situation as her ultimate victory. When Winnie tells her that she would reveal the truth instead, Cairo threatens that if she does, she will also expose Winnie's dealings with Boris, meaning that 2 teachers will be suspended instead of 1. As the consequences of their actions fully unfolds, Winnie is left to reflect on how the plan she initiated has totally gone beyond her control. Meanwhile, Cairo begins writing her college essay, as she plans to reshape the scandal into a carefully crafted story of revenge. She frames it as a personal reckoning, and as an act of justice in response to Miller's betrayal of trust and failure to acknowledge her voice as a writer. Through her narrative, Cairo positions herself as the mastermind behind Miller's public and professional downfall as she meticulously recounts every detail of the emotional fallout, painting herself as both victim and avenger. In the film's closing scene, we see Cairo walking toward the Board of Education building, where Miller sits outside in silent despair. Their eyes lock for a brief moment, and although a tear rolls down her cheek, beneath it lies a quiet sense of triumph. The damage has been done, and Cairo's transformation is complete. And that's the story of Miller's Girl. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.